Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on our little turkey centerpiece. We're going to do some pre-prep work here before we assemble the actual structure here. So you want to grab this piece here and then grab these three pieces that you're going to have cut out on pattern paper. So the reason that we have these in three pieces instead of just one solid piece is so that it's easier to run this through an embossing folder. Okay, so I ran this through a wood grain texture. I also inked the edges of all of these, and while I was inking, let me show you what I mean here. If I grab my little ink pad, what I noticed was when I was inking this, especially when you got to the inner ones here, it was sometimes I would get ink on here when I was just trying to ink that. So what I did was I took a piece of paper and I just slid it through so that only one of these is isolated, and kind of just lifted it up and inked it like this, so that if I did accidentally brush against something beyond this piece, I'd get it on the paper instead of on this piece here. And then I would just kind of move it along as I went down the row and ink that one, and so on and so forth. So that kind of helped make sure that my inking was really concentrated on the parts that I wanted inked, and that I didn't get the ink on the inner portion of this, because then it was just been a huge mess. So we're going to go ahead and glue these down. Now you'll notice that on this black piece there are a few little tick marks here that will help you identify where to place these. Okay, and you'll also notice that these two pieces kind of have a little cut area here and here, while this one is completely smooth. Okay, the smooth one goes in the middle, these two go on the side. So with that said, you can go ahead and begin gluing. And this thing's kind of got a little bit of detail on here, so you gotta kind of work quick. And if you follow along and watch all of our videos and get all of our projects, you'll remember that in one of, I think it was the freebie that we made last week, I mentioned that I sliced my finger. I was actually trying to remove a staple and the knife slipped, and I probably shouldn't have been using a knife. Probably should have just used a staple remover, but I sliced my finger really bad. It's finally healing, so if it looks a little bad on camera, I apologize, don't get grossed out. Okay, so we're going to glue that piece on first, just following those little tick marks there. Okay, and we'll get our next piece in place, and we're just going to do this systematically so that we get it right the first time. And this is, I believe it's Cartabella paper. It's nice and thick. I don't worry as much about this paper warping as I do like the AC cardstock, because it is nice and thick. Now when you place this, just make sure that you line it up with the piece that we already have down. Okay, and just make sure that these little feathers here are matching up with the little cutouts up here. Okay, now I had a little accident with the glue there. You can just rub it off, and it really shouldn't leave a sheen behind. Okay, there we go. Let's get rid of some of that in the middle there. That looks good. Okay, and then let's get our last piece on here. So we're working on his tail feathers right now. We're going to get those all in place, and then we're going to do a little bit of pre-prep assembly on some of the other pieces, and this guy's going to go together. It's pretty simple. I don't think there's anything that we really make that I would label challenging. I think, if anything, just need to take your time and just do it right. Okay, so go ahead and place that down, butt it up against that piece there, lay it down, just like that, and push that down. Get that nice and centered. If you get a little excess glue, just rub it off. It shouldn't really show through. There we go. Okay, I've got way too much glue on there. It's kind of hard to tell how much glue I'm putting on there because of the textured paper, but that's okay. It's gonna come out looking really nice. Okay, so there is our first little piece of his tail feathers, okay? And this part is actually pretty much done. So we're gonna just push that down, make sure that it sets nicely. I'm gonna put that off to the side for a second. And then we're gonna grab this large piece, okay? I've also inked this in a red color. This pomegranate color here, I actually used a black ink on this, okay? And then this pattern paper here, I also used a nice red on this to ink the edges, just to kind of give it a nice distressed finish. Okay, so this piece here, the inner circle here, that needs to be flush, and then there's going to be a little bit of a border on both sides here. You want to make sure that you keep that as even as possible, and when you do that, you'll notice that these tail feathers, they all line up nicely for you. So you want to go ahead and grab this piece. I went ahead and inked that in a nice red, this pomegranate color here. I inked this in a black, and the inner circle here, it's not really a true circle, but close enough. You want to make sure that you get that nice and lined up so that there's a nice border on both sides here, and that these tail feathers match up these little scallops here, okay? So this is a pretty large piece here. I would probably suggest that we glue maybe half of it at a time. Otherwise, we may risk misaligning it, and I don't want you to do that. So let's go ahead and just gently graze this with some glue. Don't want to overdo it like I did on the first set of tail feathers. Go real light. Don't need that much. And I think we can get away with, I don't know, maybe a third of it. And then we'll go ahead and do the other third here. It'll just be easier to manage this that way. Okay, so get that nice and lined up. I'm looking over on this side here to make sure that that border exists nicely there. And now I'm getting a nice border here. I'm gonna go ahead and push that down. Okay, so I've got that in place, and I can just peel this away a little bit. Okay, and if I don't get glue on all of this tail feather here, it's okay, but I think I should be able to. So you want to go ahead and get glue on the rest of these. Just go kind of quick, because you've got a lot of real estate to cover here. You don't need a lot. Just make sure that you try to cover as much as you can. And I may need to do this in another section here, just so that we don't risk messing anything up. Okay, and you can kind of adjust these individual feathers a little bit if you need to, if you're finding that you're slightly off a little bit. Okay, so that's looking good. All right, then we can go ahead and peel this back again. Just be very gentle when you peel it back so you don't crease it. Okay, just try to curl it back. Don't bend it back. And then we're going to go ahead and finish this off. The rest of the little tail feathers here. Just a little bit of glue. You don't need a ton of glue on this, because every little bit that you put on there is gonna, it's like a little powerhouse of grip, and they all work together as a team, and it should work out nicely for us, just like that. Okay, so just push that down, get it in place. And that looks great. If you need to, like this guy here, he didn't get a really good hold. You can just go in and touch him up, just like that, and just push that down. Okay, now the back of this, since this is also, people are gonna see the back of it, we wanted to cover that up and make it pretty as well. This piece is gonna be flush at the bottom and flush on the inside here. So you can go ahead and get your glue on this piece here. I'm gonna do the whole thing since it's a nice big surface to work with. Make sure you get it out to the edge, and you get some glue out onto the scallops as well so they don't go peeling out, or peeling back, I should say. Spread that thin. Okay, and again, just line it up with the bottom. And in doing so, the rest of it should just fall into place. Just like that. And just push down. Okay. So far, so good. We've got these tail feathers in place, and we've got these tail feathers in place. And what we're going to do is we're going to glue these together. These tail feathers at the bottom are going to be nice and flush. That's how you know that you've got them positioned correctly. Okay, so make sure that those are nice and flush. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to pop dot these, okay, because I want to add some dimension between those feathers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some 3D pop dots on here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put some 3D dots on here. Just going to space out a few. Get those on there, peel off the backings. I think 5 will do with these, depending on how, depending on the kind that you have and the thickness. You may need more, you may need less. It all depends. I think that's plenty. And then just peel that off. If you have 3D Zots, you can use those. Those tend to kind of move around a little bit because they're not like these foam squares, which is fine. But I do like these. They really kind of stay in place for me. So again, you just want to make sure that you get the bottoms of these nice and flush together. Okay, so I'm going to kind of lift this up. Usually I would just put my head over the table, but because I'm on camera here, it is a little more difficult. Okay, I'm just going to push that down like that to get that like that. And then what I'll probably do is add a few more back here to make sure that those push out and kind of stand out because they seem to be kind of curling in a little bit. So I'm going to pop these off and just kind of shove them in there. Oops. And just push that down. And maybe put one on this side and one on this side, just to make sure that those stand out nicely for me. Okay, so just kind of tuck that in there. Get the backing off these. Usually I use the square foam squares. These foam circles are just fine. It's just kind of what I had and it does the job. I don't really think it matters if they're square or if they're round. They really both do the same thing regardless of their shape. Okay, so we'll just tuck that one in there. Just tuck it in enough to where it's not visible. Okay, so there we go. Beautiful tail feathers there. And honestly, I think we're pretty much done with our tail feathers here. Okay, so we can go ahead and move on to doing a little bit of pre-prep on a few things, and then we can go ahead and begin assembling this thing. Okay, so we have our beautiful tail feathers. We'll put those off to the side, and we're gonna grab the our little wattles and the eyeballs. Okay, and we're gonna put our little eyeballs together here. So I took and I put just the embossing portion on the wattles because the eyeballs don't really need to be embossed, and I didn't want them to kind of protrude and stick out and make the gluing harder. So I just put the embossing folder from here down and ran it through my embossing machine. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put our white layer down here. So just give it a good coat, nice and gentle. Okay, and just pop those right on top of the red. I'm going to pick them up, just kind of scooch them around until I don't see any more of that red peeking through around the circular part, and just push that down. And even if a little bit shows through, it's not the end of the world. It's totally fine. We can take our blue layer then and get our glue on our blue layer here. And you could totally use googly eyes if you want. I think we tried it with googly eyes just because of the colors that we used. Just kind of didn't like how it contrasted and how it looked. So we just went with paper eyes. I inked these with a nice blue ink. Okay, and then we're just going to put our little black piece on here. And I'm just doing little dots on this, and I'm probably just gonna dab that so it's flattened out a bit. Just make sure that you are letting the white show through there so you can see his little pupils. Okay, and grab our other black piece and just toss a little glue on there. And I'm gonna dab that and put that down. Just make sure you don't obstruct the white. And I'm going to pick this up for a second. It's just easier to scooch things around that way. There we go. All right, so you can kind of see what's happening here with the eyeballs, okay, and his little waddle. So that's pretty much it for that. And aside from that, as far as pre-prep goes, we've got his little feet here. I inked this in an orange. We're gonna double these up. We're gonna go back to back like this, okay, so that you have the same color pattern on each side. So you can go ahead and get your glue on his little feet and his little talons and glue that back to back on the other one here, so you can keep the same pattern, keep it looking consistent. Okay, and just push that down and let that set. Repeat on this part here. Okay, and then I think the only other pre-prep thing we're gonna do is just construct his beak. Okay, and that will probably be it for the pre-prep, and then we can move right along into assembling our turkey's body. Okay, and this, I also inked this in a nice orange. Okay, we're just gonna push down and leave that on the side. Let that set. Okay, so we got his eyes, his waddle, his tail feathers. Okay, and let's go ahead and work on his beak real quick. Okay, now this is the beak here. I did take this and I folded it. I ran some ink along the edges of each of the edges, I should say. And we're gonna fold it like this. You've got this small little triangle here. We're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of glue right on this tab. Okay, and work that out to the edge. Fold it in, and then take the larger one and fold it over. And just kind of tuck that in and hold it nice and, well, just be gentle with it. If you can be firm yet gentle, that's kind of what I want you to do. Okay, so just hold that between your fingers, let that set, and then we're going to tuck this part in. Run a little glue on this thing here. I'm just going to dot it and spread it, and then pull this piece over right on top of it to close it off. And eventually what's going to happen is we are going to put glue on the back of this and affix it to his face. Okay, and that'll be his cute little beak. Okay, so that's pretty much it. All right, we can put that off to the side, and let's go ahead and begin with the construction of his hat, the top part of the box. I think this will be a little bit easier and quicker. Okay, so what we want to do is grab these pieces here. This is the main structure here. This is the brim of the hat. Okay, this is the little band that goes around the hat. This is the little gold buckle. These are the little ruffles that are going to go at the bottom here. And then we're going to put his eyeballs on there. So that's pretty much it for this. So what you want to do with this piece is take and just begin folding everything at the score marks here. Okay, get everything nice and folded. And there's really only one thing to glue on this, so it's, well, more than one, but it's pretty much all connected for you. So it just makes the work a lot easier, and we can actually do this flat. Okay, so fold it like this and then fold the other side over so that the end of this matches up with this tab here. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our glue. I always try to be a little more careful when I'm working with black cardstock and white glue, because if you do get a little bit of that glue out beyond where it needs to be, it may kind of create more of a sheen that you don't want. It's not the end of the world, but I try to avoid it. We can put that back down on our surface and just fold this over. That will ensure that everything matches up perfectly. Once it's folded like this, you can't go wrong, and you can't get it wrong, really. And just push that down, give that time to set. Okay, and then we can kind of fold it over the other way as well. There we go. Just like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to fold these tabs down. We're going to put glue on all these tabs here, and we're going to close the lid. So go ahead, and I just probably put a few dots on here, and I'm going to spread these out as well, just to make sure that I've got good coverage up to the edge there. I want it to be nice and perfect there at the edge. And just spread that out. And then go ahead and push this down. And as you're pushing down, you may need to kind of shimmy this thing around a little bit for it to take on the proper shape here. So I think it's a hexagon. It is a hexagon, yep. So let it partially set, and then when necessary, kind of shimmy things around. Feel with your finger around the top to ensure that you've got a nice match. Okay, your finger should kind of feel nice and smooth going all the way around this. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Okay, so next up is the little brim of our hat. And what you want to do is you want to take the little tabs in here and fold them up. What we're going to do is we're going to slide this over the design until it pretty much won't go any further. Okay, and that is going to be the location of the hat. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on our tabs here and just kind of affix them into place. Okay, so what I'm going to do is probably start on one side just to make sure that I get my first one anchored nicely. You don't need a lot of glue on this, just a tiny little bit. You don't want it smearing out. Eventually we're going to put a band over this, so don't worry too much about being perfect with this. I would much prefer that we use less glue instead of more, so that we don't make a mess here. And just kind of push this down on all sides until you feel like you've got it in the right place, and then just push that down and hold it in place. And let that set before, just really give this one ample time to dry before we move on to the surrounding pieces here. Okay, so our first one's in place. I'm gonna move over to the opposite side. Okay, it's gonna help me get this thing a lot more symmetrical. Now, in this case here, we can't really move this around too much, so just go easy on the glue and kind of eyeball this and make sure that it's nice and symmetrical before we push this down and glue it down permanently. And that looks good. Okay, so just hold that down, be patient with it. Okay, and then the rest of this will fall into place nicely for us. Okay, that should be good. I was pretty sparse with the glue, so it should have set pretty quickly, and you can follow suit and just be really sparse with the glue on the rest of these tabs. You don't need much. Okay, and again, just kind of make sure that you've got it nice and aligned. It really shouldn't budge too much at this point, but kind of give it a quick look over and just make sure that you have it nicely aligned. Okay, give it a few seconds to really set before you move on here, and then we'll be good. Okay, I'll go ahead and peel back the next little tab here, and just a tiny, tiny little bit of glue. Don't need a lot. Let's not make a mess at all. Okay, just push that down and hold it in place. Try to keep that brim of the hat nice and level. And I guess if it is cocked to one side a little bit, then you'll just have like a little rat pack, turkey, a cool little cat, I guess we can say. A cool little turkey cat. And just glue the rest of that together here. Then we'll put our band on, and our little buckle, top of the hat will be done. We can put our little eyeballs in place, and then work on his body, and before you know it, we'll be pretty much done with this guy. So it's a fairly quick project. Depending on how much time you want to spend on inking is probably going to determine the overall amount of time required to assemble this thing, but I really think that inking adds so much more interest to the project. So if you have the time, definitely use it in ink. Okay, now what I would do is take a look and kind of give this thing, just kind of circle it around a couple times and decide which side you think looks best, which side you think the brim looks the straightest, and make that the front, okay? Because what we're gonna do when we put our little band on, we wanna make sure that it closes and it connects on the back so that we don't see, so that we just don't see where it terminates, okay? So we're gonna put the band on like so, and I'm gonna begin on the front here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put glue on one of these sections here. And we're gonna get that glued into place first. I'm gonna dab it a little bit so it doesn't smear. Get this glued first. And then we can go ahead and do the rest of it. Okay, so that is the one with the glue. I'm gonna try to get that nice and flat on my brim. Should match up with the little, wait, did I get the right? Yes, I did. Just push that up against this part of the hat here and let that set. And then we can go ahead and put glue on the rest of it and wrap it around. Okay. All right, so once that's set, you can kind of peel back these parts here and get your glue. I'm just gonna do 2 more little sections at a time here. Don't wanna overdo it here. Okay, and just wrap that around. Just try to make sure that you've got it nice and flush with the brim of the hats. And just push down, make sure that it's nice and secure. Okay. And then we can go ahead and finish it off by putting glue on these 3 remaining sections here. Just make sure you get it out to the edge there. That's probably the most important part so that it looks nice and clean. I'm gonna dab that a little bit. Spread that glue out and just work it around. And it should match up nice and perfectly with a slight little overlap so that there's no gap there. And just push that up against the hat. And voila, there's our little top to our container or centerpiece. Okay, so remember where your back is, remember where your front is, and we can put the little buckle on here. And just get that glued right to the front there. Just gonna put a few little dots of glue on the buckle here, and as small as they are, I am going to go ahead and dab that a little bit because I just know that that's going to smear. So get that right on there, nice and flush with the brim. And just push and hold that in place until it sets. There we go. Looks pretty good. Okay, looks great. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put this little ruffle around the bottom of the hat. So you can kind of put it like this, and you want your, whichever texture you decided you were going to use, you want that sticking out. So you want to go ahead and fold these at the score marks. Okay, and I think again, what you probably want to do is figure out, well, we know where the front is. That's the front. We also want the back of this to be in the back, just so that it just looks cleaner that way. Okay, so you can go ahead, and what we're going to do is this is actually going to go inside of this box top here, like so. Okay, and you can see how nicely that fits. If you want, what you can do is fold these over as much as you possibly can, so that when you pop this in, let me just figure out where my front is again. Excuse me. Okay. And we pop that in. It will just kind of sit nicely for us right in there, so we know where it goes. Okay. And that is how it's going to be glued in. Okay. So what I'd suggest doing is probably would begin by just doing a little bit of glue on this one piece here. And actually, you know what? I think we're probably going to need to go all the way around on this. So I think with this, just a nice line of glue all the way down, maybe a double line. Okay. Again, find your front and maybe make it smaller than it needs to be, so you can kind of pop it in there without getting any glue anywhere else on your project, and then just kind of push it down into place, making sure that the corners meet up right at the folds. Okay, and now we can go ahead and push this down till it hits the base of this thing. And just kind of push that, go around and just kind of squeeze gently. Okay, so that's how it should look. And we're gonna, once this sets, we're gonna take these little petals here, these little doilies, the feathers, whatever you want to call them, and we're gonna train them so that they kind of curl, so that they're not just flat and boring. Okay, so give that some time to set before we move on here. And I'm actually going to peel this back a little bit because I didn't get it down to exactly where I wanted it. And that's okay, because this part no one's going to see. So if you kind of mess up a little bit, you can always rip it. Just be careful, and then you can pop it back on and give it a little extra time to really set. Okay, just want it nice and flush with the bottom of the top part of the hat here. Okay, so let's let that set. I don't want to put the eyeballs on just yet. I think we're going to do that last, just because it's, you know, it's got the little wattle part here, and I don't want to mess with the beak and all that while I'm curling the little feathers and so on. So let's put that off to the side and let that set, and then we can go ahead and begin working on the body. Okay, so we're ready to begin constructing the main structure here. And you'll notice that we have two segments here. Well, two pieces with 3 segments each. And you'll also notice that on the top here, there are some little notches. These are, I guess, our little Roman numeral system here. There's a 1 here and a 2 here. That's pretty much the most important thing that you need to focus on right now. And what we're going to do, because I feel that the bottom is probably the most important thing to get right so that it sits nice and flat. The lid is going to cover up the top. So if that's slightly off, it's not the end of the world. So what we want to do is just get our first section connected here. And you want to get it right up to the little score mark there. Get it right on that angle, hit it right on that angle so that it's perfect. And by the way, you want to make sure that you fold and crease everything at the score marks before you start doing this. So that is just going to make this a lot easier to put together because it is kind of angled. And when we fold, we're kind of releasing the fibers of the paper and making them bend a lot easier so that when we finally get them into their final position, there's no resistance and we have a nice perfect shape. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fold this a couple times here. And the next thing we want to do is get our glue on this tab here. Just nice and easy. Spread that out. Now we are going to be putting panels over this, so if you get a little bit of glue that like leaks out or something, it's not the end of the world. But at this point, we are going to begin shaping this piece. So we want to make sure that we're getting it, oops, and lining it up precisely with its neighboring piece here. So just go ahead and get that in place and just push and hold that until it sets nicely. You can't put this down on your table now. You got to kind of work with it in midair because it's already starting to take on its form. So just be patient and make sure that this dries nicely and securely. Okay, just push and hold that down. Again, we're going to be putting panels over this. So if you get a little bit of glue that smears out, it's okay. Try to keep it to a minimum. And then we can go ahead and get our next piece in place here. So we can fold this back to reveal the little triangular tab. And I'm going to clean off my glue bottle because it's kind of getting caked on the tip there. And that just makes it kind of sloppy. Okay. Get our glue right onto that tab there. Spread that out and tuck it back in. And just make sure that you're following the curve and the angle there, getting it right up to that score mark. You don't want to go over it. You kind of want to get it like halfway over the little score mark, if that even makes any sense. Okay, just hold that in place until you're sure that it's fully set before you move on to the next tab. Okay, just real thin lines of glue so that they dry nice and quick. Okay, tuck that in and get that nice and aligned, nice and precise. And just squeeze. I'm using my middle finger underneath here to push up while I'm pushing down with my thumb. And just keep squeezing, get that glue to kind of penetrate and get into all the little nooks and crannies of the threads on the paper. And let that set for a second. Okay, and then all that's left to do is connect the top. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of glue on this tiny little triangular tab here, and I'm going to inch that out to the edge. And just make sure that you're connecting them at the correct angle there, just like that. And just squeeze. Wipe off any excess glue that you may have seeping out. Okay. And that is how we join the two pieces together. Now that they're joined, I'm going to work my way this way, I think. It really doesn't matter at this point. It really doesn't. But we can go ahead and begin. Because these are all connected, we don't have to do the bottom first. We can kind of work on the middle. So I'm going to grab this tab here and get my glue on there. And just make sure that you're getting it at the correct angle. Just hold it between your two fingers until it sets. It's a pretty small tab, so it's not going to take long for it to stick, but be patient with it and give it ample time to dry before you move on to the next tab. We can peel this away and get our glue on the next tab here. Nice and thin out to the edge. I'm going to spread that out and just get that nice and lined up. And just squeezing it, getting it nice and lined up. Just be patient, let it set, don't rush. And then we can peel this back and get our glue on the tiny little triangular tab here. Just gonna put a tiny little bit of glue on there, get it right out to the edge. Our little panels are going to cover up the black portion too at the top. So again, if you kind of get a little bit too much glue on there, it's not the end of the world. So don't feel bad. It'll totally be fine. It'll look great. Okay, now we can peel this back and get our glue on this tab here. And inch that down. And again, just make sure that you're getting it nice and aligned with that edge there, with that line. And just squeeze. Get that to hold. Okay, so got like 2 sections done. This process is pretty repetitive here, but I don't mind walking you through it. So many of you have mentioned and commented you really appreciate the thoroughness of our videos, so I want to continue that for you. Okay, now this one here, you'll notice there are no score lines on this. Okay, this is a flat piece, and we're going to keep it flat. So and that's where our little tail feathers are going to go. So let's peel this back for a second. There's a really, really tiny little tab here. Just need a little bit of glue on there. Tiny little bit of glue. Okay, just line that up as precisely as you can and hold that down just like that and give it some time to dry. Okay, I'm just kind of holding it in one hand here. There's not much of a tab in there. I guess there is. You can feel it. Just be patient and let that set. Okay, it's a tiny little tab. All right, so while we're still kind of holding that, I'm going to grab my glue, get it on our next tab here. You can see it there. Okay, spread that out. And I'm going to fold this back and just get it nice and aligned. And just squeeze. Again, see I had a little bit of glue on my thumb and I'm ending up kind of spreading it onto the back of this piece. But again, we're going to be putting panels on this, so not the end of the world. This is all going to be covered up. These are basically like it's like the skeleton of our turkey. Okay, and then let's go ahead and get glue on this tiny little tab here. And spread that out. And just get that nice and matched up. Right there, like that. Just squeeze and hold that in place until it sets. That's looking good. Okay. And then that just leaves this tiny little tab down here. Might need to access it from the inside here. It might be kind of tough to see because of the light. There it is. You can see it there. Tiny little tab there. go ahead and get glue right on there and connect that to the back and just kind of squeeze that and let that hold. Okay, so the back here is nice and flat so that we can affix our tail feathers to it once this thing is all completely assembled with our panels and all that good stuff. Okay, so before we join this side to this side, I think it's probably a good idea to go ahead and connect the other portion of this together first. So I'm going to start with this tab here. You can see it here. Okay, let's get that glued into place. Just a little bit of glue. Spread that out. Tuck it under. And just make sure that you're following that angle there. And again, it's a little bit of a smaller tab, but enough to where you can get one finger on it and just push that gently, making sure that you got that nice and aligned. Okay, we can flare that out and get glue on this tab here. And work that out to the edge. And tuck that in and under. Line it up. Just hold it in place. And the further along you get in this process, the more you'll notice that it starts to kind of take on its own form. It kind of understands where it's going, and it just makes the job a lot easier. Although I don't really want to call it work, because this is fun time, right? Okay, so go ahead and get your glue on that last little tab there, tuck that under, and align it nicely. And just squeeze until it sets, and that just leaves this little guy here. There he is. Get our glue on this tab here. Spread that out. Tuck it under. Get it nice and aligned. And just hold that in place. I'm going to tuck that in a little bit more. I think I may need another light in here. Sometimes with black it's a little hard to see, so I may have to do that for you guys and for me a little bit too. Okay, there we go. So that's looking good. This thing's kind of looking like a little cauldron. I had someone request a cauldron actually on our Facebook page the other day. Okay, so we've got this side here to connect to this piece here, and then we can go ahead and close this up. So again, if you're feeling like you understand this process, feel free to fast forward and move on. I just don't want to leave any stones unturned here, especially for people that are new to this process. Okay, so we're just getting that tab in place here, getting that glued in place. And really, I wouldn't even say this is difficult. It just requires a little bit of patience. And before you know it, though, we will be done with this, and we'll be getting to the really fun part of seeing all of this come together, which is kind of why I like to do a little bit of the pre-prep stuff ahead of time, because it's easier, it's a little more fun. You get a sense of almost like instant gratification, a sense of instant accomplishment, and then kind of just more excited to see it all come together. And then when you do some of the more challenging parts, once you're done, you don't have a lot more stuff to do. And you can, like I said, get on with the really fun parts of putting it all together and seeing it all come together. So we've got this little tab here. Just get your glue on there. Again, don't worry if you get a little excess glue in little spots here and there. It's all going to be covered up. Okay. All right, and that just leaves this tab here. And then we're going to be connecting this thing, joining it and making it one solid piece. Pop the bottom on, and we can work on our panels. And then just put all our feathers and wings on, and before you know it, I have a beautiful little centerpiece, or I'm thinking that this will make a really cute hostess gift for Thanksgiving. I'm sure I'll be going to a couple this year, and can put some cool stuff inside this thing. Okay, so it's all pretty much put together here, minus the back, and we're basically just joining this together now. I do want to start with the bottom. Okay, so let's go ahead and get glue on the bottom tab here. Work that out to the edge. I guess I'm being overly cautious with this because that's how I roll. But again, this is all going to be covered up with panels, so just make sure that you've got this nice and aligned, nice and lined up, and just push and hold that between your fingers here, and make sure that it gets a good grip before you move on to the next little tab here. Okay, and now this is going to be a little more challenging here because I don't have a lot of room to work as far as our little glue bottle goes. You can, if you want, grab a spatula or grab a razor blade, and if you can't get your fingers in there, use a little tool to spread the glue out on the tabs. Whatever you got to do. Okay, and again, don't worry if you get a little bit of glue poking out. It's totally fine. Just make sure that you're following that angle, getting everything nice and lined up. Just squeezing between my fingers here. Okay. Making sure that that gets a nice hold. Okay, and again, this is going to be a little difficult now. You can actually, if you want, you can see from the inside here. I think, see if I can get enough light in there. Hold on a second, let me grab my phone, because it does have a little flashlight on it, so I can show you here from the inside that there's the tabs there. You can work the glue in from the inside if you want. Okay, so what I'm doing at this point is I'm pulling the tab back, and I'll show you. Let me just do it real quick, and then I'll show you kind of what I'm doing here. Just get some glue on there. Let me pull this back. And you can see, well, let's see if you can see it. There it is, right there. That tab right there, I just put some glue on it from the inside rather than trying to poke it through in here. And then I can just go ahead and continue working it the way I was before. So if you can't get your glue in from the outside, you can always try to kind of finagle it from the inside here. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and put my glue on from the inside again. So there's that. Just want to show you here. It's kind of awkward for me to do this, but it's okay. You can see this tab here. There it is right there. You can see that tab right there, pointing to it. I'm going to put glue on it. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. Now this is kind of awkward for me because kind of a one-man show here as far as the camera work goes, so bear with me. Okay, so there's that tab that I just put glue on. You can see the glue on there. Okay, and from the outside, it's this tab here. You can see the glue there. And just gonna go ahead and squeeze that between my fingers, just as we have been doing this whole time. Okay, and that just leaves our little triangular tab at the top to close this thing up. We'll put our bottom on and we'll be rocking and rolling here. Okay, so again, just leaves this little triangular tab here. Let's get our glue on there. Make sure we get it out to the edge nicely. Okay, and close that up. And just hold that in place. So you see here, we've got, let me push these tabs down real quick. Okay, so there is our little structure, and it's round and then it's flat on the back because that's where the little tail feathers are going to go. Okay, so at this point, that looks like a hexagon. Now, with this part here, these two pieces, we're going to double layer the bottom here. And one thing that you do want to keep in mind here is that these are not symmetrical pieces because we do have one part that is longer than the other parts, and that is the back part. So if you can't visually identify that, what you may want to do is grab a ruler and just find the longest side. Okay, so that one goes up to about here, as does that one, and this one is a little bit longer. So I'm assuming that, let me see here. Okay, so we've got about 2.5 here. That's 2.5. That's 2.5. That's 2.5. And this is 2 3/4. So this is the back side, okay, which is here. So let me just make sure I got that right. 2 3/4. This is the back side here, and that is going to go on like that. Okay, so we're going to glue that on first. Just do a visual. Make sure that you've got it lined up properly. Now, because this is a weird shape, it's moving around. It may not seem like it's right, but as long as this is the same width as that tab, you know you have it in the right spot. So just make sure you have it aligned properly. Make sure you've got your back, and we're going to actually begin by gluing our back on, because everything else will kind of fall into place. As long as we have that lined up properly, the rest of the sides are the same length or width, length I should say, and they will all magically fall into place. But that is the one piece that you want to make sure you get right. And I kind of lost it again. So let me just make sure that I've got it right. I do, right? I'm so bad at that. Okay, there it goes. All right, so just line that up with this tab here. Okay, just kind of scooch it around until you've got it nice and centered, and then just push. Give it a few seconds to grab its initial hold. Okay, and then you can put it flat on your table and push down from the inside to really get it to stick. And that's just going to set the tone for the rest of this as far as the gluing goes. Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, so now we have that in place. The bottom's gonna go on nicely here for us. Okay, so we have 5 tabs here, and it's not really possible to try to do this in stages. So you are gonna have to glue all these at the same time, which is fine, because we can always go back in and do some cleanup should we have to. If for some reason we don't get it to stay nicely, I'll show you a little tip that I'm sure many of you have already seen if you follow our site and watch our videos. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Would love if you would subscribe to the channel. I have a personal goal. Would love to someday reach 100,000 subscribers. So if you love our stuff, and if you love me as much as I love you, please subscribe and make my dream come true. Okay, so I'm just kind of spreading that out to the edge as best as I possibly can. I'm going to flare these up so that as I push this down, it grabs more of that surface area. Okay, and now again, because there's nothing stabilizing this, you may just kind of have to inch these sides around, and initially it may not stick because the glue hasn't really grabbed on yet, but after about, I don't know, 10 seconds, it will begin to grab its initial hold, and then it's a lot easier to kind of scooch these pieces around and get them to sit exactly where you want them to sit. I'll be happy if I can get 3 of these sides in place nicely, and then if there's 2 sides that maybe don't stick very well, you can just go back in and clean them up, which I'm gonna have to do here. As you can see, that did not stay down very well, which is okay. So let me show you my little trick here. Grab just some scrap paper, and I'm gonna lay some glue down, and I'm gonna take a razor blade. I've also used spatulas, like the kind that you use to take your papers off of your mat, and I'm simply going to take some glue and just spread it right onto the paper, wipe off the excess, and hold that down. I'm just really giving it a lot of personal attention right now, just to make sure that that seam is nice and clean. And you can see there, as long as you hold it and it grabs it, it's gonna be a beautiful seam, and you're not gonna see anything, you're not gonna see it, you know, wide open and, you know, a giant gaping hole there. It will dry and it will stay nice and closed, and it'll look nice and beautiful. Okay, so just be patient while that sets. And then I've got this side here too that just didn't get enough glue on there. So it's a lot of area to work on, so don't feel like you failed if you couldn't get it glued on properly the first time. And add a little bit extra glue on there, and just push that down and hold it down until it gets a really good grip and you've got a nice clean seam. Okay, so just hold that down for a few more seconds until it sets, and then we'll have a beautiful base, and this thing is ready for some panels here in just a minute. Okay, my bottom's looking great, and I've got one more of these little bottoms, and we're going to pop that on just to kind of reinforce this bottom. Usually we put these little liner pieces on the inside, but because of the shape, it's not really going to be possible. So we're just going to reinforce it on the bottom by giving it an extra layer. And I'm just going to get my glue out like this in the center there, and then work some glue out around the perimeter. Spread that out to the edge, so it gets a nice grip, and pop that right on. Just kind of run your fingers along the perimeter, push down on the edges there. That's probably the most important thing that you have to do there. And again, if you have to, grab your little spatula or your razor blade and go in and clean up any of those edges that you're just not 100% happy with. Like this one here. Just not totally happy with how that went on, so I'm just adding a little extra glue and giving it a little more tender love and care. Okay, so that side is looking good. I've got one more little flawed area here that could use a little extra glue. Clean that off and just hold that in place while it dries. Okay, so far so good. I'm gonna put that on my table and maybe just kind of jab it with a dowel. Okay, and base is looking pretty good. I do have maybe one more little area here that I want to clean up. There we go. Just got to be patient and let that set. Okay, so at this point we are ready to put our panels on here, and we've made that process pretty straightforward as well. The panels are going to add some color, some texture, some interest, and also going to make this turkey look nice and plump instead of boxy. Okay, so here are our panel pieces, and you'll notice that your machine will have scored a little notch on here indicating the number, and all you want to do is match it up with the number that's already at the top of the lid here. Okay, so that's like the number 1 there, and that's going to go on like that, and then it's going to kind of fold over like that. Okay, so what we want to do first off, before we actually apply it, we do want to train this just a little bit. Okay, so I've got a 3/8 inch dowel here, and I'm just going to put it flat on my table, and right at the top here, right where it folds, I'm going to grab it by that tab, and I'm just going to pull up very gently, and you see what happens there. It kind of curves it a little bit. I think that's all we really need. We don't need it to curve much more than that, because ultimately we're going to be gluing it at the bottom, and it'll know how much more it needs to bend. But I wanted it to have a little bit of a curve on its own. So what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on this. I don't want to call it a tab because it's really not. It's just the top part that is folded. Okay, I'm going to spread that out so it goes on there nicely. And find where it shows the number 1 and just match that up. We're not putting glue on anything but that tab, so we don't make a mess. Get it nice and centered on there and nice and flush with the top there, and just push and hold that down. Just make sure that it's nice and centered. Okay, and hold that down until it really sets. Okay, and then we're going to glue the bottom of this in place, and I don't really think it's necessary to put glue anywhere but at the bottom. As long as you get that glue on the bottom, and you know what, this really does look like a cauldron kind of. As long as you do that, it'll stay in place. So what I'm suggesting we do here is just take our glue and put the glue right at the very bottom. Okay, and I'm going to thin that out by just spreading it like so. And just make sure that you've got it nice and centered, and just be very patient as this part sets here and dries. Okay, and that is what it's going to look like. All of a sudden we've taken a boxy geometric shape and have given it a round appearance by using this little technique here. Okay, and that should meet nice and perfect at the bottom there. Okay, oops, kind of dented that. Just pop that back out. Just be very patient and let that dry at the bottom there. Okay, I also inked this with a black ink, just FYI. Just kind of give it a little more interest. Be patient while that sets. I think we got it. Okay, so we're going to find number 2. Let's find our number 2 here. That looks like a number 2. So just like we did before, we're going to fold this little piece back, and almost forgot to train this thing. So again, I'm just grabbing by the little tab here and just pulling up, and there you go. It's got a nice little curve on it. Not too much, just a tiny little bit. All right, let's get our glue on this little, we'll call it a tab, the folded part, the tiny folded part. Spread that thin, make sure you get it all the way out to the edge there. Okay, this is the number 2, so find the number 2 on the base of your turkey. Okay, get that nice and lined up and fold it over. Just make sure that you've got it nice and aligned with the top and the sides. Okay, and then it's just going to fall into place for us. It's going to look really nice. Hold that in place until it's fully set. All right, we can lift this up, and again, just like we did on number 1, we'll just grab our glue, get some glue at the bottom here. Spread that all the way out to the bottom if you can. All the way out to the edge too. And just fold it over nicely and kind of shimmy it around until we're sure that we have it all the way at the bottom. And just be patient let that really set before we move on to the next piece there. There we go. Okay, so really, this process, I don't really think I need to show you how to do this 5 more times. The process is pretty much identical going all the way around. The most important thing is just to make sure that you're being patient while this bottom part really gets a good grip. I wouldn't put glue here because I feel like that might ruin it. You really want that nice round look. Okay, so let's just do one more here together. Let's find our number 3. And this is our number 3 here. Okay, so let's take this, fold it this way, and just pull up gently, give it a curve. Okay, let's get our glue on our tab. As we decided we were going to call it a tab. Get it all the way out to the edge there. I might have put a little bit too much on there. Clean off the little edges. Clean off your fingers, most importantly. And line that up. Right there. Make sure that it's nice and flush at the top, nice and centered on the section. And just squeeze. Okay, and as you can see, that looks good. All right, lift that up. And let's get our glue at the bottom here. Just want to get it all the way out to the bottom because we want this thing to be nice and perfect. We don't want any part of that lifting off. Okay, I think that's pretty good. And just push that down. And just hold it in place until it sets. Okay, so pretty much halfway done here. And this here, as you can see, it's basically a square, but there's 4 marks. That indicates it's number 4. This is number 4. This is the flat part here. Okay, so again, we're gonna, actually, we don't really need to curve this whole thing. We just need to curve the top part here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab from this side and curve it like this, just so that top part curves. Okay, and actually, you know what? This has a score mark on it, so we don't even need to curve it. And we are gonna actually put glue on this entire piece. But we are gonna start by putting the top on, because that is kind of our anchor, and that's gonna ensure that the rest of it sits correctly. So most importantly, just get that glue all the way up to the top there, to the edge. Okay. And get that nice and aligned with our number 4 section. Get it nice and centered, flush with the top. And just push that down. Make sure it's nice and aligned. Okay. And then I really hate to use more glue than I need to. So as you can see, that fits on there nicely. I'm gonna go ahead and just throw a little bit of glue on this part here. Just do it in sections, just a tiny little bit, just so it sticks. It's gonna be flush anyway. It's a nice flat piece. Just hold that down, push down. Okay. All right. And then we can go ahead and get the bottom of this glued into place. You can lift this up. So we didn't put any glue on there. And I'm just going to put glue on the bottom. I want to warp the paper. I want to keep it nice and clean, nice and simple. Save some glue as well. Okay. And just close that up. Make sure you've got it nice and centered too. You might have to shimmy it over to the left or to the right a little bit, depending on. And don't worry too much about this. The feathers are going to be on the back of this. You're not really going to see it too much, so not a big deal. Okay, so once that's set, let's move over to the number 5, which is designated with a square and a 1 next to it. And I can already tell that this is our number 5. So again, we're going to take and train this just like that. I gave that one way more curve than the other ones, but that's okay. And get our glue on this tab here. Spread that out. Get it all the way up to the top there. Okay. Clean off any excess. And get that in place. Get it nice and lined up with the top. Nice and centered within the section. Push down. And let it set. And then go ahead and glue the bottom in place, just like we did. Might as well finish this up for you. I'm always tempted to kind of show you how to do it a few times, and then I feel like I just don't want to be redundant, but I don't know, just kind of into this. So, all right, get that nice and aligned at the bottom there. And just hold that in place while it sets, and that just leaves one more little panel here that we're going to get in place, and then our panels will be done, and we can begin kind of finishing this thing up. Okay. All right, so that's that, and that just leaves this last piece here. This is number 4, 5, 6. Okay. And just nice and easy. Well, that time it was kind of a wuss because I thought I gave it too much of a curve the first time, or the time before this one. Okay, so go ahead and work that glue out and get that nice and aligned, nice and centered in the section, nice and level with the top. Okay. That's really what you want to focus on, is making sure that that's nice and flush with the top there. The rest of it should just kind of fall into place. Okay, and that looks great. Okay, I can go ahead and put our glue on the bottom. And spread that out. And fold this over. Should meet nicely and flush with the bottom. Just press and hold that down until it sets. Okay, so our panels are done. We have some little neck feathers that we're gonna put together next, and that's gonna actually cover up these numbers on here. And I'm gonna discuss that a little bit in more detail here in just a second. Okay, all right, so our main structure is all together. We've got a nice flat back, okay, and just scrape off some of this glue on my finger here, and we can go ahead and begin working on the next section. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take these little, well, neck feathers or whatever you wanna call them, and apply them to the top of our container here. Now, when you initially take these off of your mat, you'll notice that there is a little Roman numeral that's etched into the paper next to these shapes. Okay, and what you want to do is, before you peel them off your mat, you want to go ahead and just notate the number that was next to it. In this case, this was next to the number 2. I have a number 2 on the back of this. This has a number 1 on it, and this has a number 3 on it, okay? And they're gonna go on in a very specific order, okay? So your number 1, and this is my number 1, I've got it right there. That's going to go on the front here, and it's going to make up this number 1 here, and then it's going to go here as well. Okay, now before we put these on, I want to go ahead and train these and flare them up. Okay, we want to give these a little bit of dimension. Okay, just like that. And then let me clear off my glue bottle tip. Okay, and we can go ahead and just put some glue right on the top of this. Just a nice little line up at the top. Get it out to the edge there. And you're going to begin by putting this right on the first front section here. Okay, so squeeze that between your fingers. Get it on the first section there. Get that nice and flush at the top there. Okay, so there's section 1. Now find the second section, section 2 here. I'm going to curve these up. Now I also went ahead and inked and embossed this as well with a Crackle embossing folder. Same one we used on a Halloween product, actually. Kind of gives the illusion of a nice decomposing leaf, I guess you can call it, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so we're going to put that on next, right next to this one. And just shimmy it over, make sure that it's right next to it there. And squeeze nice and tight. Make sure that you got it nice and lined up. Okay, and hold that in place. Give it enough time to dry there before you let go. Okay, so that's piece number 2. Just like that. And we'll do piece number 3. We're going to do the same thing with this. Go ahead and curl those feathers up. Okay. And the reason that we have these numbered is because this piece is a little bit longer by just a tad. Okay, so get your glue on the back of this, just at the top. And get that in place. Just make sure that you've got it nice and aligned at the top. There we go. And just hold it in place. Give it a few extra seconds to really hold and dry. Okay. So we have our little neck feathers on. Now we can revisit the top of our box here. And you want to go ahead and take and curl these guys up. Okay, you may want to grab a thinner dowel. The 3/8 inch dowel might be a little bit too big for that. So I'm going to grab a 1/4 inch dowel out of my little stash. And just go ahead and grab them and just curl them. Just like that, just to give them a little more interest so they're not just dangling off there. Okay, give those a nice curl. Just like that. And I'm going to put that on top here and just take a look and see how everything is coming together. And we can probably put our little eyeballs on now that this bottom part is nice and dry. Just go ahead and curl those against the dowel just to kind of pep them up a little bit and bring them down just like that. Okay, so that is our front. That's gonna go like that, okay. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some of my foam circles and I'm just gonna place two right dead smack in the middle. You can use foam squares, foam circles, doesn't really matter. You can glue this down if you want, you can pop dot it, whatever you wanna do. And find your front, there's my front. Okay, and you want the eyes about there. Okay, you gotta leave enough room for the beak. Just make sure that you have it nice and centered. There we go. Okay. So there's our little gobbler. I'm gonna go ahead and take this, just train that out a little bit. Maybe curl the bottom a little bit. And just train that out just a tad. Okay, so our turkey is starting to come together here. Okay, so we've got the eyes in place. We can go ahead and take the beak and we're gonna glue the beak pretty much right underneath the eyes here. So you want to go ahead and put some glue on the back part of the beak and thin it out so that it dries quicker and more evenly, and just kind of press that underneath the eyes as far as it can go and push. You can push from the inside as well, just to make sure that that really sticks. And then we can put this off to the side again and revisit it when we're ready to put our lid back on. But that is our little head there. So we're gonna let that dry and we can focus on putting our wings on at this point. Or you know what we can do actually? Yeah, I guess we can put our wings on here. Okay, so remember, this is the back. And this is the front. We're gonna put the wings on these two sides here. So just right next to the front, okay? So we've got wings for both sides. These black pieces here, and we'll just kind of do these in order. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take and we're gonna train them. Just gonna give this a slight curve so that when we do apply this, it kind of just hugs around the body. Okay, so let me straighten this out a little bit. Yeah, just like that. That's pretty good. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this flat part here, and we're gonna align it up here where that fold, where there's the fold basically, all the way to the left edge and up to the fold, okay? So you want to go ahead and get your glue. We're definitely going to put some glue right up at the top here, and then just a tiny little bit along that portion there. Okay, let's spread that out. That's going to be covered up by this piece here, but go ahead and get that nice and aligned and level with that fold there. Okay, and just push and hold that down so the wing kind of comes over just a tiny little bit, and you can push that down and hold that in place so you kind of get the idea of what that's going to look like. Okay, and then we're going to take this larger piece here. Okay, there's two more pieces for the little wing part. There's this piece and this piece. They're going to go just like this. Okay, and this one here, I'm going to curl this in. Okay, so train it like this. Okay, and that is going to go right on top of the black wing so that it covers it like this. Okay, and all we need to do is put glue right up at the top here. Okay, so just cover up maybe, what is that? About a half, well, maybe a third of an inch there. Just spread that out a little bit and just line it up with that black piece, make sure that it hugs this black part here nicely. It's nicely lined up. Okay, and then just push and hold that down. Let that sit like that. Okay, and then this one here, I'm gonna curl this out so this feather kind of comes out. Okay, we're just gonna put glue right up at the top and get that right next to this one. Just like that, so it's right next to it. Okay. And I'm just going to repeat that on the other side. Okay, so again, you want to take this piece and it's going to go here, right there. Just show you here. Right up to where that little score mark is. Okay, so we just want to kind of curve this a little bit so it kind of hugs the body. And again, we're just putting glue at the top, a little more than that. And then just a tiny little bit along this edge here. Okay, and get that nice and lined up with that score mark so it's right there. We want that wing to kind of come over a little bit. I can retrain that here in a second. Okay. Those are his nice little chubby little arms. Okay, we can push down here where we had our glue as well. Don't need a lot, just a little bit. Okay, and then again, we're going to take this piece here and I'm going to train it so it flares out like that. And we just need to put glue right up at the tip. And go down a little bit more. Spread that out. And then just line it up with the very back edge of this piece so that it's nice and flush. And so that it's nice and flush down here with this black part. And just hold that down. Okay. And again, this piece, we're going to flare out the other way. So it's coming out. Get our glue right on the tip there. And get that aligned with the piece next to it. And make sure that it overlaps this black part nicely. Okay, that's about right there. And just push and hold that in place until it sets. Okay, so there's our cute little turkey. And I'm probably going to grab a smaller dowel and curl this even more. So it's kind of like that. Okay. All right, so his wings are on. At this point, we can go ahead and get his feet in place and a few of the other little embellishments for his chest. So we can lay this flat. This piece is going to go. Now there are actually some little markers on here. They're very tiny, but they are visible. So we're just going to go ahead and dot some glue on this piece here and get that aligned with the little markers there. It will help you get that placed perfectly. Okay, and then the smaller one here, this is the little feathery portion of his belly. Okay, and get that in place, just like that. Okay, so there's this cute little bod. And the feet, okay, the feet are gonna go right here at the bottom, probably put them on a little bit of an angle, and I am going to use my little foam circles. Just put one right in the center of that guy. Okay, and we don't want them going below that line down there. Okay, we want them kind of, so we're gonna go ahead and put little foam squares on the back of the feet and just get those placed right about there. Okay, and let me fix that a little bit. Just like that. This is a foam circle, my apologies. Just in case you're thinking, Leo, you don't know your shapes. I promise you I do. Okay, and just get that right on there. Just make sure this doesn't go below the bottom, otherwise it may not sit as pretty. Try to get it nice and symmetrical down there, okay? And that's pretty much it, guys. We're gonna put the tail feathers on here in a second. There's our turkey. Look how cute that guy is. Okay, and then all that's left to do, and I'm not gonna do this just yet because I'm gonna actually do some more embellishing on this, and I do want you to take a look at the photo, the final photo. You'll see that what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna put some little white pearls on here, liquid pearls in the middle of these feathers. And then also on these feathers here, we're gonna be adding some little rhinestones. Okay, so I'm not gonna do that on camera because it's kind of a waste of time. But ultimately, to finish this guy off, what we're gonna do is we're gonna glue this onto the back. Okay, so that, and what you wanna do before you do that is you wanna flare these up even more. Okay, just to kind of get them out of the way. So we're gonna just kind of flare these up. Okay, and what you can do is you can actually go ahead and put glue on the entire back part of this, and this bottom part here is gonna line up with the bottom of this guy here. Okay, and you're just gonna push and hold that in place until it sets, so that ultimately, I'm just gonna put this down flat so you can kind of, well, I guess that's not really gonna help if I do it flat, but that is what your final turkey is gonna look like.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.